Brian Flores and the Minnesota Vikings attacked Caleb Williams in some new ways on Sunday, and Dennis Allen tried to throw some different wrinkles at JJ McCarthy as well.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast in the country. On the show today, we're going to break down some of the different ways that the Vikings attacked Caleb Williams and some of the different things that they did to try and make life more difficult on this Bears offense. Now that we've had a chance to kind of go back through and rewatch the game and get a better sense of what both coaching staffs are doing, we can do the same approach for JJ McCarthy and the things that were working well for Dennis Allen and the Bears early on that maybe didn't work as well down the stretch when JJ McCarthy all of a sudden gets hot late in the fourth quarter once again, but Bears find a way to hold on. And we'll have to talk about the special teams there too, because we have an opportunity to look a little bit closer there, especially with a slight special teams news update at the kicker position for the Bears as well. Something that kind of slipped a little bit under the radar in the wake of the win. But I want to start with Caleb Williams and really both quarterbacks, but we'll start with Caleb because they both finished with the exact same completions and attempts. And obviously I think very different games overall, even though the completion percentage and actual pass attempts end up being the same. But the two defensive coaches staffs took very different approaches to how they wanted to affect these quarterbacks. And even Brian Flores did a lot different from week 1 compared to this game now in week 11 that presented a new challenge and I think represented an opportunity for growth for Caleb Williams that maybe we would have liked to see a little more from Caleb, but I don't think it was bad by any means. I just think it was a new challenge and something that they had some moments of success against and also some struggles against. And it kind of, I think more so the variety and aggressiveness with which Brian Flores attacks him, I think explains a lot of the maybe inconsistencies we saw in this game that sure, maybe you would like to see better, but also you can understand that not a lot of quarterbacks are going to have a ton of success when you're getting blitzed on 78% of your dropbacks in this game. Is the number of that was the rate that Brian Flores blitzed Caleb Williams. He had 25 pass attempts with a blitz and 7 pass attempts without a blitz. Now within there's a few scrambles and sacks, plays that, he didn't attempt to pass, but were still plays that he blitzed on, of course. But that, just to kind of give you the volume difference there. There were constantly at least one extra pass rusher coming after Caleb Williams. And a lot of times it was just, one extra man. It wasn't like he was sending 7 or 8 all the time. Like when you look at the plays by number of pass rushers, 19 of the blitzes were a 5-man rush, and only 5 of them were a 6-man rush, and they never sent more than 6 guys. So, out of 26 blitz plays, 24 blitz plays, 19 were a 5-man rush. It wasn't sending the house over and over again, because we talked about it in the lead up to the game. Caleb Williams has been pretty darn good at, when you're sending the house at me, I know how to see that quickly, get rid of the ball quickly, be decisive, and not really let that, it affects him, but more so he's confident and decisive in how to respond to that. Whereas we've seen over the course of the season that when it is more like a 5-man rush, he tends to be a little bit more willing to hang in the pocket and try and play like normal and not just say big blitz equals throw the hot route, get rid of it quickly, but say, no, I can hang in here a second. I think we can pick this up. I think we can get this play operating the way that we want it to. And I think sometimes that's where you can run into trouble when he maybe is overconfident in the offensive line's ability to hold up or overconfident in his ability to escape. And he certainly has a great ability to escape, and we saw it over and over in this game, but then that disrupts the timing of the passing routes downfield, and then it becomes a scramble drill, and that's when players aren't quite as much on the same page. And so I think when I look back at Caleb Williams' performance against the Vikings, the thing that stands out to me from an accuracy standpoint is how often he was specifically overthrowing receivers in this game. That like when he was missing guys, it wasn't because they were falling, short, or not even like, I mean, some of that can be miscommunication, right? But it's not like, oh, these are tight window throws that he's just not able to fit in there. But like, you can think about the first couple of deep shots on third down, but even over the course of the game, a lot of those downfield passes, he was just putting too much air under. And I hypothesize that can be a little bit of result of the blitz, where two different things are happening there. One, an extra pass rusher is coming, so you know that you don't have as much time to throw the ball, so maybe you rush it just a little bit, and when you do rush it, then maybe you're not necessarily setting your feet properly. You're not necessarily following through on your throw mechanics. And that tends to be where you see some overthrows, where like the ability to drive the ball comes from the quarterback shifting his weight from his back foot to his front foot, and like the arm coming down after, as he's releasing the ball, right? The release point on the way, the arm coming down is kind of the momentum that puts the ball, on track where you want it to go. And the overthrow can come sometimes when you don't follow through all the way, or when you don't finish the transition of your weight from your back foot to your front foot, right? Because you end up getting a little bit more air under it as a result, and it ends up going a little bit too far, and you don't really get that like pinpoint, like putting it right where it needs to be. So I wonder if there's an aspect of that, and then also just like an aspect of being on the move and not being able to set your feet sometimes if the pocket is a little bit messy and you're not able to just be in rhythm, set and fire away there. And certainly that wasn't the case on all of his overthrows, but like you look at the true media and the PFF stats on this, like out of Caleb Williams' 16 incompletions in this game, 6 of them were overthrown passes. Now, 3 of them were drop passes, and 4 of them were intentionally thrown away, where he's just getting rid of it because he's under pressure. He's not trying to hit a receiver. He's just chucking it out of bounds safely. So like you got 7 of those plays that are drops and throwaways, and that eliminates almost half of his incompletions. And then 6 more are overthrows. Then everything else is just like 3 more, little things here and there. But those consistent overthrows, and usually happening on deeper shots to Rome Odunze. And most of them, I think 5 of the 6 were on blitz plays where the Vikings sent a 5-man rush. And I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, I think 4 of them were intended for Rome Odunze. But most of them were those deep shots, specifically 3 of them in the first quarter and 2 of them in the second quarter. You saw as the game went on, he was able to dial that in much better and be more precise on those throws. I think as the game went on, that's when you saw more of the throwaways, a couple of those in the fourth quarter. You saw the drops come a little bit more later in the game. I think they were all 3 of those specifically credited drops were in the second half. The accuracy got better as he got more comfortable and more used to, okay, he's going to blitz me every time, or, essentially 8 out of 10 times. So I have to operate as though this blitz is coming. And I think those deep shots kind of kept him from he wasn't just throwing the check down every time, but he did know that he needed to be more decisive and a little bit quicker with the ball. He definitely got rid of the ball more quickly, a faster time to throw on those blitz plays, and did a good job of those blitzes not necessarily becoming sacks. They blitzed him, 26 times? They got pressure on 10 of them and sacked him on 1 of those blitz plays. One of the sacks was not on a blitz play. He generally responded well to Brian Flores' blitzing. It just took a little while to kind of adjust to it and find his groove in his approach to it. Certainly, I think the same thing was true for JJ McCarthy on the other end when it comes to this Bears defense, where they had him pretty flustered for the first 3 quarters and change, and then all of a sudden down the stretch, he kind of dials in late in the fourth quarter and has a big drive to go down and score a touchdown. So we'll take a look at what the Bears did against JJ McCarthy to make things difficult, and then what he started to maybe figure out a little bit next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We're loving all the NFL action right now, but the NBA is back too, and there's no better place to get in on the basketball action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Because even if you miss the start of a game, or you just want to ride that hot hand once it gets rolling, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It just keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one that's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today and making us the number one sports podcast network in the country. Appreciate you listening through, even though I'm a little bit more nasally on the podcast today, dealing with a little bit of a cold here, but we're powering through, and hopefully it's not, too annoying or distracting for you here, especially as we break down what was certainly an exciting Bears-Vikings game, a fun one, even with some ugliness in there. And we kind of felt it at the end, where all of a sudden, in back-to-back games against JJ McCarthy, week 1 and week 11, he really puts it on late in the fourth quarter. And after struggling mightily through much of the game, all of a sudden you see him put a touchdown on the board when the Vikings needed it most. And not just like the offense moving well, but like him completing passes consistently. That final touchdown drive to Jordan Addison to take the lead. I think he was, 5 of 6 on that drive, and he had completed some passes on the previous scoring drive. Like the Vikings were able to get some things going with him all of a sudden out of nowhere. And I was curious as to trying to figure out what exactly was different. And I still don't have a perfect crystal clear answer, because, in football, there's never one thing where it's oh yeah, here's what they did differently, and that's why, everything went wrong from there. But I can point to a couple of different things as this game went on that I think are somewhat of a factor here. Because when I look back over the course of the game, generally the Bears sat in zone coverage the vast majority of the time. They ran about 6 plays of man all game, and then the other, my math when I'm sick is hard, 26 plays were all zone coverage. And they were pretty willing to say, hey, we bet that A, we don't want our we don't want our cornerbacks one-on-one with their wide receivers, but B, the reads can be easier for a young quarterback when it's man coverage, as opposed to being able to disguise zone coverages a little bit more. You can rotate the safeties, or, there were times when the Bears ran some inverted coverages, like the touchdown Nahshon Wright gave up in the front corner of the end zone was actually a disguised cover 2 on that drive. And I give JJ McCarthy a lot of credit. I'm not sure that he perfectly read it that way, but that he threw the ball in the absolute perfect spot there to put it on the front pylon of the end zone, almost kind of back shoulder for Jordan Addison, so that Nahshon Wright couldn't get over there. Because essentially they're in a cover 2 on that play, but typically the cornerback to that side on a cover 2, right, is playing underneath, and you have a safety over top. But they had Nahshon Wright playing the deep zone on cover 2, and essentially a slot player, whoever comes up and plays the underneath coverage there. So that's why he's people were wondering why does he have his back to Jordan Addison? Why doesn't he get outside of Jordan Addison there? Because he's playing a deep half of the field, and he kind of has to split those 2 receivers. And he still wasn't in a horrible position, but it was a really nice ball from JJ McCarthy, and something that wasn't a super obvious, easy to read coverage necessarily. But again, I'm not convinced JJ McCarthy even read the coverage properly. He just looked at the space and said, hey, I think I can fit it in here, and threw in a very good ball. But when I hone in on that fourth quarter specifically, Dennis Allen did a couple of different things differently down the stretch that I think stand out to me as maybe some factors here in how things got better there. That they started blitzing JJ McCarthy in the fourth quarter after having not done a ton in the first three quarters and not had a lot of success with it in the first three quarters. That they blitzed him 6 times in the fourth quarter, and they had blitzed him 6 times in the first 3 quarters combined. He was able to get 42 yards against the blitz compared to only the 34 yards he had on plays where they didn't blitz him in that fourth quarter. Now, obviously, the touchdown was not against the blitz, so it's not as though the blitz explains it perfectly. And not every play was a blitz, but I think much like Caleb, right? When Dennis Allen starts sending some extra rushers, he says, "Okay, I got to get rid of this ball, and I just need to know, I just got to find a place to get it, and it can allow him to maybe overthink it a little bit less and be a little bit more decisive." And I think you see some of the benefit of that, especially, they sent a couple of 6-man pressures against him. I think it was 2 6-man pressures, and they were both completed for 21 yards, down the stretch in that fourth quarter with, if one look at one was, both were with under 2 minutes to play. He completed passes against a heavier Bears blitz. And one was on fourth down when he completes the fourth down conversion to Jordan Addison. He says, "Okay, blitz is coming. Snap, turn, throw, completion." Gets it there one-on-one against Nick McLeod at that time. And then a little bit later on that drive, he hits Jalen Naylor to get them into the red zone, right? And it's not even like the world's most difficult throws or plays, but it just kind of speeds that processing up a little bit and eliminates some of the things that had been working earlier in the game when they were sitting back in zone and making him have to read it. You look back in the first quarter, he was 3 for 3 against the blitz, but 3 of 7 when not against the blitz. And, in the second quarter, he was 2 of 6 when the Bears didn't blitz him. In the third quarter, he was 0 of 3 on all his passes in the third quarter. But you could see these different situations where sometimes, you don't want to just let him sit in the pocket and have all day to throw because, with time, quarterbacks can start to do some damage on you, but he was responding well when the Bears blitzed him. And I kind of understand that maybe you think, well, we weren't blitzing him that much in the first 3 quarters, so maybe if you start dialing up a little bit more aggressive, you can rush him and get into his head a little bit. I'm not here to say that Dennis Allen is dumb or, that I know better, that he made the wrong decision there. It's just more so looking to try and see what the difference seemed to be down the stretch. That's one area I look at as, McCarthy seemed to have more success when they blitzed him. And it's part of the risk that you have to run as Dennis Allen. Do you let your 4-man rush struggle and give him a bunch of time to throw, or do you blitz him but then risk giving up stuff on the back end? And that's, that was sort of the gamble he had to go with there. And I think ultimately it didn't pay off super well down the stretch. But again, I don't think that solely explains exactly everything that, went wrong or didn't go right, down the stretch there. I also think we saw a little bit more man coverage down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And I think that's as a result of the blitzes, where they didn't really run much man coverage at all through the first few quarters. But then, a couple of those blitzes came on cover 0, right, where it's just man across the board, and he completes both of those passes. And they have some cover 1 in there as well. It was a little bit less of a variety of coverages down the stretch there. That, again, it's a trade-off, but I think McCarthy responded better than Dennis Allen and company may have expected in that stretch. And also, it helps that Vikings receivers stopped dropping passes in some of the same ways as well. A lot of those were happening a little bit earlier in the game, but he only had 2 drop passes in the fourth quarter compared to 4 over the first 3 quarters. He was 6 of 8 on non-drop passes in that fourth quarter, whereas earlier in the game, I think those drop passes were coming in bigger, more critical situations that hurt the Vikings on those drives. And when they start holding on to the ball a little bit more, your defense looks a little bit worse, even though maybe it had been covering just as well. It's just the difference is, are receivers holding on to them or are they not? So I think it certainly doesn't fully explain the sort of sudden light bulb being switched, just like there's not really a way to perfectly explain why Caleb Williams has been so clutch down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Sometimes, the adrenaline starts pumping a little bit more when your back is against the wall and guys just focus in and dial in and are ready to go. And that's how the unmeasurable explanation of the clutch gene can be a factor in there as well. Unfortunately, the Bears didn't need that from Caleb Williams in this game, in large part due to the special teams. And I want to take an opportunity now to kind of dig a little bit deeper into special teams beyond just like, okay, Cairo Santos hit a kick and missed a kick, and Devin Duvernay had a nice big return at the end. But like, I want to focus on some of the Bears' struggles in terms of the coverage units, and also there was some kicker news on Monday, and we can check in on Devin Duvernay's special team season as well. So we'll kind of do a little special teams check-in as a factor in this game and what to expect from that group moving forward. Next on Locked on Bears.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
So we talked a little bit on yesterday's podcast about how, it's hard to be super confident in the Bears special teams, even though they came up clutch at the end, but only after having caused some problems earlier in the game that in some parts necessitated them needing to come up clutch on the end. And in that same vein, I wanted to kind of look bigger picture at this Bears special teams this season, because for as much as Bears fans, and I'll throw myself in this category, have thought that maybe it's time to have a more open kicking battle with Jake Moody, now that we've seen Cairo Santos miss 2 field goals under 50 yards in the last couple of games, that was supposed to be the one thing he's automatic at. And certainly not that Jake Moody is some sure thing either, but eventually when Santos already has the weakness of not having a lot of strength for the long kicks, and then once he starts missing the shorter kicks, then he really doesn't have a leg to stand on. Pun not exactly intended there. But now the Bears won't have a choice, because on Monday, the Washington Commanders signed Jake Moody to their active roster off of the Chicago Bears practice squad. And the Bears were kind of in a rock and a hard place there, because you can't stop a team from signing a player from your practice squad to their full roster. You can stop them from going practice squad to practice squad. They can't just take your practice squad guy and put him on their practice squad. But if they're willing to give him a full 53-man roster contract, then your only option is to give that guy also a 53-man roster contract and essentially promote him to your roster before the other team is able to officially sign him to their roster. And so the Bears were stuck with either let the Commanders take him, or you have to free up a roster spot and put Jake Moody on your 53 and devote 2 roster spots to kickers. And so it's kind of a not an ultimatum, but really you got to make a decision at that point. You either are all in on 2 kickers in a kicking competition, or you let him go and he's no longer available and part of your team. And I think it's a tough spot when Santos hits the game-winning 48-yard field goal and gets a game ball from Ben Johnson in the locker room afterward. The optics of going from that to, but you're fighting for your job now, and we just signed another kicker and, cut another player on the roster that could have potentially helped the team, win games. There's not a lot of fat to trim on this 53-man roster. Are you putting Ja'Day Walker on injured reserve and having only 5 wide receivers? I mean, we don't have to go through all the mechanics here, but the Bears don't have a lot of extra depth sitting around with some of the other injuries that they have on the roster to give 2 spots to kickers. So you got to let Jake Moody go. So now you're stuck with Cairo Santos. Sure, you can bring in another kicker to put on the practice squad to sort of replace Jake Moody in that regard, but you're scraping the bottom of the barrel for kickers, just like you were with Jake Moody, who was a cast-off from the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe you're looking at the kicker that the the Washington Commanders released Matt Gay. Like, obviously, you're getting a kicker who just missed 2 kicks. Like, all the kickers you're looking for are guys who are free agents for a reason because they've missed kicks for their team or just haven't been consistent enough. Like, you got Eddie Pinheiro, I think, is sitting out there somewhere. Younghoe Koo is out there, I think, somewhere. But like, these are guys who have struggled with their team. So you've been left the whole time without a clear and obvious upgrade over Cairo Santos. But at least you'd seen Jake Moody kick at Soldier Field and have some success, although he missed a field goal in that process as well. So it's not like he had been even perfect in Chicago up to that point. So it just feels like a little bit of a rock and a hard place. And I think we're just going to see the Bears continue to ride it out with Santos, even if that means, another missed field goal or 2 down the stretch. And it hasn't cost them a win just yet. Came pretty close against the Vikings on Sunday, but you worry about when those consequences will eventually come, maybe against better teams like the Eagles or the Lions or maybe the Packers. I don't even know if the Packers are a better team as the stretch goes on here. But I worry about that for Bears special teams as a whole, because we've seen consistently a lot of hidden yardage given up to opposing return men where, the punt and kickoff return touchdowns haven't been a big thing. They had the one, but it hasn't been like they're giving up points directly every week. But, against the Vikings, there was a long punt return that set up the first Vikings touchdown in that fourth quarter that, the return itself wasn't a score, so it doesn't go on the stat sheet as like the big obvious mistake, but clearly it set up an easy touchdown for Minnesota. And I look at this Bears special teams unit, and they are 3rd in the NFL in most missed tackles on special teams. It's not always a correlation that bad teams miss a lot of special team tackles and good teams don't. I think the Giants and the Eagles are the 2 teams ahead of the Bears in missed special teams tackles. So obviously one good team, one not so good team there. But like Ja'Day Walker has missed 4 special teams tackles. Linebacker Carl Jones has missed 4 special teams tackles. Defensive end Daniel Hardy's missed 3. Safety Jonathan Owens has missed 3. Linebacker DeMarco Jackson has missed 3. Josh Blackwell has missed 3. Tight end Durham Smythe has missed 3. Like, it's a bunch of guys across the board all missing handfuls. It's not like, there's one guy who's missed 10 and then everybody else has missed a couple. Like, the Bears have missed 29 tackles on special teams, and they have 7 guys who have missed 3 or more over the course of the season. Like, there seems to be a little bit of a tackling issue there. It's not all tackling. Sometimes guys get out of position and then blocks get set up where the returner's not even making a guy miss. He just gets a lot of space to run, and so he runs free and has a big return there. But like, that feels like an issue. Like, as we kind of keep special teams coordinator Richard Hightower under the microscope a little bit as the season goes on, like, we're seeing average to maybe even above average punting from Tory Taylor. I would say closer to average this season, but okay, how much is that the coach versus the player? We're seeing field goal kicker miss some kicks, kicking 80% this season. That's below expectations there. I think Duvernay has been fine. He hasn't been great, but he hasn't muffed anything. Haven't seen fumbles from Devin Duvernay on the return. Like, his averages on yards per punt and yards per kickoff return are both pretty solid this season. Not top of the mark, but not bottom of the pack either. Like, I think Duvernay has been fine. He's not messing up. He's not causing problems, and has had a couple of good returns. That's acceptable, I will take from Duvernay. But coverage units have not been good enough. Field goals have not been good enough. And punting has been average at best, and you would like better from Tory Taylor, given how early the Bears drafted him. And so we're going to keep keeping an eye on Bears special teams, and you hope it doesn't cost them the actual difference between a win and a loss down the stretch. But if it does, you can be sure we'll be here to break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're looking for a second listen today, be sure to check out Locked On NFL. It comes out twice a day, once in the morning with Tyler Rowland, and again in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. I co-host it Tuesday mornings with Tyler Rowland. We talked about the Jamar Chase suspension. We talked about the injuries to Aaron Rodgers and Michael Penix, and of course Justin Fields getting benched as far as quarterback storylines, and then the Jaguars and Texans hanging on in the AFC playoff race, as well as the Monday Night Football game between the Cowboys and the Raiders that, 2 bad teams. Cowboys offense looked pretty darn sharp, but still Always more football talk for you on Locked On NFL. Just make sure you come on back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.